Right, adding fractions again, okay, but these ones don't have the same denominator, so they're slightly more difficult. So the ones we looked at last week had the same denominator and they were relatively straightforward to do. If you think a fifth plus a fifth is just 2/5, as long as the bottoms are the same, you just add the tops, right? That's going to be our final stage here, but until such a point as they don't have the same denominators, we can't add them. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make equivalent fractions to each of these so that they do have the same denominators. Okay, so if I go through something like a half, I could think of all the equivalent fractions that I know. And the point is there's infinite. So there's specific ones I'm looking for, and I'll show you an easy way of doing this in a second. But if you think of all the equivalent fractions you know to a half, you could have 3/6, you could have 5/10, you could have 30/60ths if you so wished. Okay, they're all equivalent, but none of them actually end up with the same denominator as this. I'm not helping myself. I could do the same with a quarter. Okay, I could have 2/8. I could have 5/20ths. I could have 25/100ths. But again, I don't actually have a pair of matching denominators. So I've basically got to do this until such a point as I do have a pair of matching denominators. There's an easy way of doing this, okay, because I'm basically looking at the numbers that I start with on the bottom, 2 and 4, and what I'm looking for is the lowest common multiple of 2 and 4. Because what I'm doing here is to create the equivalent fractions, I am multiplying, okay? I'm timesing top and bottom by the same number, and I just automatically create an equivalent fraction. So if I can do that, knowing that there's a number that I can multiply the other fraction by to give me a same denominator, okay, then I can create equivalent fractions that have the same denominators, okay? So I'm looking for the lowest common multiple of 2 and 4. So the lowest common multiple of 2 and 4 is actually 4. Okay, and if you thought about this earlier, this was actually straightforward enough because you know, and you probably saw that I deliberately missed it out, that a half is the same as 2/4. Okay, so now I have two fractions, okay, that are the same, that have the same denominators. So a half is the same as 2/4. Okay, but I want to use 2/4 along with the 1/4 that I need to add to a half. Okay, but I have to use it as 2/4 so that they have the same denominator. And as long as they have the same denominators, then I can just add the tops, add the numerators. If I've got 2/4 plus 1/4, that gives me an answer of 3/4. Okay? So what I have to do first is I have to multiply till such a point as the denominators are exactly the same. In this case, it was quite easy. All I actually had to do was change one of them. Okay, I just had to change a half into 2/4 and then just add the tops. Okay, but for some of the ones, it's going to be a bit more difficult. Okay, so we've got 2/3 plus an 1/8 here. So I'm looking for basically a number that I can multiply 3 by and a number that I can multiply 8 by so that I end up with the same denominator. I'm looking for the lowest common multiple of 3 and 8. The lowest common multiple of 3 and 8 is 24. Okay, and the way I'm going to do this is basically I'm going to start by writing that denominator. So I'm going to change both of these fractions so they both have a denominator of 24. Okay, it has to be the lowest common multiple because basically I know that I can multiply 8 by something to give me 24 and I can do the same with 3. That's what we mean by a multiple. Okay, and then I basically just got to work out what I have done to do that. Okay, what have I multiplied 3 by to give me 24? And then I need to do exactly the same to the 2 on the top. So 3 times by 8 gives me 24. So I've times the 3 by 8, so I need to multiply the 2 by 8. 2 times by 8 is 16. So I've got myself an equivalent fraction there. 2/3 is exactly the same as 16/24. Now I want to do the same kind of idea with a 1/8. So I've multiplied the 8 by 3 here to give me 24. So I'm going to multiply the 1 by 3, okay, and that gives me 3. So 1/8 is the same as 3/24. So all I'm doing is exactly the same thing here. This is the same question. 2/3 plus 1/8 is the same as 16/24 plus 3/24. It's just now in a form that I can actually do the addition because I have the same denominator, okay? So then it's just a case of adding the tops. 16/24 plus 3/24, 16 and 3 is 19. The answer is 19/24. Okay, so I have to do this alteration first. I have to create equivalent fractions. You can't just go straight ahead and just go 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 8 is 11. That's not the same answer and it doesn't work. Okay, if you're going to add or even subtract fractions, okay, they have to have the same denominator. So we have to change it first. So if you look at this last one, we've got 5/6 plus 3/4. Same idea again. I'm looking at the denominators that I'm given at the start, 6 and 4, and I'm looking for the lowest common multiple of 6 and 4. Okay, so I need basically something that's in both the 6 and the 4 times table. Okay, so if I go through the 6 times table, I got 6, 12, 18, 24. I'm wanting a number that's also in the 4 times table. Ideally, I want the lowest one. It just makes my life a little bit easier. So the lowest common multiple of 6 and 4 is 12. So once again, I'm going to rewrite the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to give them both a denominator of 12. And then I'm just going to work out what I've done to give me that denominator. So 6 has been multiplied by 2 to give me 12. So if I've multiplied the 6 by 2, I need to multiply the 5 by 2. 5 by 2 is 10. So I've got myself an equivalent fraction. Though these two fractions are exactly the same, I'm going to do the same thing with 3/4. I've multiplied the 4 by 3 to give me 12. So I'm going to multiply the 3 by 3 to give me 9. 3/4 and 9/12 are exactly the same thing. But now I've given myself a situation where I can add these two fractions because they have the same denominators. I couldn't have done it the first. As much as you want to just do 5 plus 3 is 8, 6 plus 4 is 10, that's my answer. It doesn't work like that, okay? So 10/12 plus 9/12 is 19/12. Okay, and this is where it links back into what we were doing last week. We don't like this. This is not the ideal way of writing a fraction. This is a top-heavy fraction, so we want to change it into a mixed number. So if you remember, 19 divided by 12 is 1 remainder 7, so it's 1 and 7/12. If you think about it, 12/12 is my whole number, and if I've got 12/12 away from this, leaves me with 7/12. So I've got 1 whole and 7/12, okay? Right, the same thing applies for when we are doing a takeaway. So if I have, let's say, 11/12, and if I take away 3/8, okay? Same thing applies. So 11/12 take away 3/8. Still can't do it unless the denominator is the same. As much as it's tempting to just do 11 minus 3, 12 minus 8, you can't do that. It doesn't work like that. So the denominators have to be the same in order to actually take away. So again, I'm still looking for the lowest common multiple. Lowest common multiple of 12 and 8. If I'm not quite sure about my times table, start with the bigger of the two numbers and just go through the 12 times table. Right, 12, is that in the 8 times table? No, it's not. Next number in the 12 times table is 24. Is that in the 8 times table? Yes, it is. Okay, so nice and straightforward. I'm going to change both of these denominators so that they're 24. Okay. And then again, I'm just going to make the same adjustment that I did to the bottom as I did to the top, okay? So 12 times by 2 gives me 24. I'm going to do 11 times by 2. That gives me 22. So these two are exactly the same. So I'm not changing the question. I'm just changing the way that I do it. 8 times by 3, gives me 24. So I'm going to take the 3 and times it by 3. That gives me 9. So these two fractions are the same quantity, okay? These two fractions are the same quantity. So I'm still doing the same sum. It's just now in a situation where I can actually do it because the denominators are the same. 24 and 24 on the bottom, so I take away the tops. 22 minus 9 is 13 over 24. And that's my answer. Right, the only other thing you've got to be careful of is when you have a mixed number. So let's say, for example, if we had 1 and 1 and 5/8 plus 2 and what numbers haven't we used yet? 2 and 5/6. Okay. So similar to what we were doing last week, and you actually did a couple of questions like this last week, you can just deal with these whole number parts separately. So the 1 plus the 2 gives me 3. And then I've just still got the 5/8 plus the 5/6. Okay. So I can almost just ignore the 3 just now. Okay. And just focus on adding 5/8 and 5/6. It's the same idea as before. I need a common multiple of the denominators. So 8 and 6. The lowest common multiple of 8 and 6 is actually 24 again. You'll see 24 is a very nice number, okay? We'll use it quite a lot. So I'm going to rewrite both of these fractions so they have 24 on the bottom. I've still got that 3 there, so I'm just going to pop it there just so I don't forget it. Right, I've multiplied the 8 by 3 to give me 24, so I'm going to multiply the 5 by 3. That gives me 15. I've multiplied the 6 by 4 to give me 24, so I'm going to multiply this 5 by 4 as well to give me 20. Okay, these two fractions are the same. These two fractions are the same, but now I have a common denominator that I can just add. 15 24ths plus 20 24ths, add the tops, is 35 24ths. So basically what I've got is I've actually got 3 and 35 24ths. This is wrong in so many different ways. I've got a top-heavy fraction here plus this number. So I'm just going to change this so that it's a mixed number. 35 divided by 24 is basically 1. That's 1 whole, so I'm going to add that onto the 3. So that gives me 4. And then the difference is 11. So I have 4 and 11 24ths. Okay, so 35 divided by 24 is 1. I'm going to add that onto the 3. That's my whole part. And I'm left with 11 24ths. Okay, so 4 and 11 24ths there. It would work the same if it was taken away. You just got to be very, very careful. What's important to do when you're taking away is actually to change them into top-heavy fractions first. Okay,